It's the Unhappy Hour.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, Kentucky, Louisville to be specific. Hello everybody, welcome again to another episode of The Unhappy Hour here on the New American Media. My name is Brian Engelman. I'm your host, as I have been for the past 9 years. I don't even know what's happened. How did 9 years pass? I don't know. It's not like the world's any different than it was 9 years ago, but I digress. Welcome to the quarantine, welcome to the fun, welcome to the party. I have today with me Mr. Brandon Odell. Brandon and I have been doing, Brandon, we've been doing radio shows since 1997, I think. Way back in
that would be right.
Way back in the Clinton administration, to put it into perspective.
Simpler times, my friend. Simpler times.
Yeah, exactly. Who would have thunk it? Well, thanks for joining me today. I know Brandon and I, we kind of, I mean, we're big Cleveland sports fans, no doubt. We both like the Cavs. We both like the we both like the Indians. But I think the thing we have settled on has been doing a show called Strictly Browns for the Unhappy Hour Sports Show. And with Strictly Browns, we just kind of focus on the Browns. We obviously had our draft, and we're going to break down the draft picks. We're going to talk about the trade backs. We're going to talk about how the roster is going to be compiled, how, you know, the new head coach and general manager dynamic, how did that play out? And we're going to get into that in just a moment. I just want to take one brief second to thank you and say, if you're not in our Facebook groups, you need to do that. One Facebook group is called The Unhappy Hour Sports Show. It's private. Join it. Almost 2,000 members. Very active. The other one's called Strictly Browns, powered by The Unhappy Hour. Finally, we have a limited edition batch of pins. Those collector pins, like the Disney pins or the Kentucky Derby pins, any collector pins. We made 100 of them. We'll never make any more of that specific design. It's a fundraiser to pay for our graphic designer who created the cool logo that's stamped on the metal pin. 100% of the profits will go directly to the graphic designer, Ted Distel of Distel Design. And then when he's paid off, it'll come back to the Unhappy Hour and help me. So thank you very much to the 5 pins that I sent out last week. Minimum $25 donations. If you're interested, just comment, hit me up, tag me, let me know, and we'll get one of those out in the mail to you. John, I think John just got the latest one yesterday, and he's sending payment today or tomorrow. So thank you, John. Brandon, this was draft number 1 for the new regime. In Dorsey we trust is no longer something that we say. We're talking about Andrew Berry. What do you make of the overall view of how he handled this draft this year?
Well, I would say just from an objective standpoint, you hope that you go into a draft and you fill some holes while not necessarily overlooking talent when it is available. And the goal is that you're not going to hit on every single guy, but that you come out of it with maybe 3 solid starters and maybe 2 more guys that are ready to contribute on special teams. And seems like at least on the surface, there's a good mix of both. It seems like we're going to have at least 3 guys from this draft that are going to have the opportunity to step right in and compete for starting positions, if not basically being handed the starting positions outright due to a dearth of talent in those areas. But in general, it looks like we've gotten some decent role players that can start out on special teams and make an impact there, and maybe have a chance to develop in a couple of years into a Joe Schobert, Christian Kirksey type of player, a guy that spent his first year or 2 on special teams.
And then, so let's kind of look at what we did there. Obviously, some players are plug and play, and other players are going to be more projects. Every draft, it's the same thing. But let's start at number 1. And the Browns did do some wheeling and dealing. I guess probably at pick number 2, we'll talk about the wheeling and dealing and the trades and kind of the moves that the Browns did to position themselves for this year and for the future. Let's talk about Jedrick Wills out of Alabama. We did our pre-draft show, and we were talking pretty much most of the world, if you're paying attention, most of the world was saying that drafting an offensive tackle was going to probably be our number one priority, especially in this draft, with about 4 guys that I've seen a lot of mocks, and in a lot of these mock drafts, they had a different blend of who went first. So the Giants picked somebody we had our eye on. Talk about the offensive tackle position, how the draft came to us at pick number 10, and how you feel about Jedrick Wills.
I lost you just for a second, but if I heard you correctly, basically I would say, everything that's coming back from the Browns, like I heard you say that, the Giants chose the first tackle off the board. But if you ask any 4 different scouts before, or if you would have asked any 4 different scouts before the draft, you probably would have gotten 4 different interpretations of the order in which that these 4 main left tackle prospects were going to be chosen. As is probably the case with any regime, a lot of times you're going to hear them say that the guy that fell to them was the one that they targeted all along. And this is no exception. They're definitely, they were saying, Andrew Berry and co. were saying that Jedrick Wills was their number 1 target. And when he fell to them at number 10, there was 0 hesitation. There was 0 discussion of any kind of a trade down. This was the dream scenario for what they were hoping would happen. And they got their man. This is somebody that Joe Thomas, who certainly knows a thing or two about left tackles in the NFL, had targeted as his number 1 guy. He felt that he had the highest floor, and when you say some of these times you say a high floor, low ceiling guy, but high floor, high ceiling. This guy starts out very polished. He's come from a pro. He's already received pro style coaching at the University of Alabama for 4 years. So this is not someone who has to step in and learn a whole new way of playing offensive football. So, and he's going to be coached by Bill Callahan, who's widely respected throughout the NFL as one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. So, basically, as Joe Thomas said, anyone that Bill Callahan gets his hands on for a year or two is going to be a much, much better football player for it. So the technique is already there. The bend in his knees is already there. The ability to play with a little bit of a dirty streak is already there. He's played against top-flight rushers in the SEC, several of which he'll probably it seems like we decided to get a few SEC defensive players ourselves. 3, I believe, in fact. So some of these guys he's probably familiar with, including our defensive tackle, Jordan Elliott, which we can talk about in a minute. But this guy has experience. He has he has good coaching. He has good pedigree. He has everything that you're looking for. So, once again, based upon what Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns front office said, this was the exact person that they hoped would come to them at number 10. It worked out exactly as they wanted it to, and the only question now is that because of the fact that Jedrick Wills actually played right tackle in college due to protecting the left-handed quarterback Tua Tagovailoa's blind side, is how the adjustment will go to playing left tackle from right tackle. Joe Thomas says it's about a 3-month process, and he said just in an interview in the last couple of days, Jedrick Wills told Joe Thomas that he had been working on his left tackle sets from the day he entered made himself eligible for the draft.
Oh, okay. So that is a great thing, knowing that your stock will rise, obviously, if you can play as left tackle, especially having spent all that time at right tackle. Going through the comments here in the Facebook group, Matthew Palantino has given the Browns an A on the draft. He's saying that Jedrick Wills has got tons of athletic ability and speed for his size. Going through CBS Sports is grading the Browns draft pick of Jedrick Wills Jr. as a B. And I just want to kind of give you a couple sentences here on the pre-draft analysis for Jedrick Wills to kind of know what kind of game he has, what type of player he is. It said, Wills is a mauler and a natural finisher with the power to move defenders in the run game. He's an easy knee bender with a powerful punch who rarely gives ground in pass protection. He oversets at times, but he has enough balance and agility to stay in front of defenders when his footwork is sound. Wills grades out as a plug-and-play starter at right tackle, but he could also kick inside to guard. So then their post-draft analysis here, this is on ESPN.com, it says, the Browns get the best tackle on our board at pick number 10. It'll be interesting to see where Wills plays, considering they signed Jack Conklin to play right tackle, and Wills plays right tackle at Alabama. The Browns aren't going to re-sign Greg Robinson, who started 22 games at left tackle over the past 2 seasons, so Wills could move to the left side. It's worth noting Wills protected left-handed Tua Tagovailoa's blind side. So yes, they mentioned some of the same things you did, Brandon. I couldn't be happier with this. On a personal level, I wanted to address the offensive line. We have so many talented skill players. It's ridiculous. I don't think Kevin Mack, Ernest Biner, Webster Slaughter, Reggie Langhorne, Ozzie Newsome, I don't think they have anything on Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. I think what you need to do is really focus on that offensive line, and I'm pleased with the Browns for doing that. Now moving on, I want to talk about what happened with the Browns trade. So let's see here. The Browns had 9 picks before the weekend started. They increased it to double digits on Friday when they moved back 14 spots in the 3rd round. Okay, I guess we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to that because that's obviously the 3rd round pick. So for the Browns then, pick number 2, pick number 44, Grant Delpit. We did trade with the Colts. What did you think about the Browns sliding back with the Colts?
It was a little bit of a gamble. Picked up, I believe, an extra 5th rounder to be able to move back a few spots. I think that this was just one of those cases where I think it was pretty obvious that the Browns had targeted safety, and they probably had a collection of a few different guys that they were pretty happy with being able to choose from. At that point, the only safety that had been selected was Xavier McKinney, who frankly had been someone who was pegged to go in the mid to late 1st round. And so there wasn't a lot of expectation that he was going to be there at number 41 anyway, and he wasn't. He was chosen in the 30s. But all of the other safeties, there were about 3 or 4 safeties that you and I had discussed the other day, and all of the rest of those safeties were on the board at that point. So you figure that you can move 3 spots, still have an excellent opportunity to get one of a cluster of players that you were very interested in, probably because of the fact that Indianapolis had targeted a specific player. And as you saw, they chose Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin with that pick. And, frankly, Jonathan Taylor, I mean, that's a stud running back. And that was a perfect spot to be able to pick him. So hats off to the Colts. But so we moved a few spots down, picked up an extra pick later in the draft. I believe, was that the...
I'll tell you what this was. The Browns traded back in the 2nd round from pick number 41 to pick number 44 with the Colts in exchange for a 2020 5th round pick that was ultimately used on Washington center Nick Harris.
Okay.
The Browns picked LSU safety Grant Delpit at 44 and Missouri defensive tackle Jordan Elliott at number 88. We'll get to that in a second. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what we did. We added that 5th round pick, and we got a center. Obviously, another player on the line that's going to get to work with Bill Callahan. I'm so excited we got a center also. You have to build studs. You have to build consistency in the draft on the offensive line, and we did that. And so if it only cost us a couple of picks and we weren't going to take that running back anyway, that is a home run out of the park, an excellent pick. That's something that pick number 44 with Grant Delpit, CBS Sports grades that an A-. They were very happy. They gave all of our draft picks B's and A-, and it's pretty impressive. Let's talk about Grant Delpit for a second then. So I guess we're pretty happy with Andrew Berry accumulating assets. That's always a smart move if you don't need the player the other team wants. Talk about Grant Delpit for a second. He was one of those featured players, and they kept cutting away and showing him and his family, and they had custom T-shirts with his own name on it, which was weird. But it's okay. I have one of those as well. But what kind of player are we getting in Grant Delpit? Is this another situation like Greedy Williams where there's question marks on tackling, and he had a better season the season before he came out of the draft? It seems like deja vu. There are some similarities, right?
That's exactly. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. He had a better 2018 season than a 2019 season in terms of statistical numbers, and everybody after the 2018 season had pegged him as a surefire first-round pick. Still had a pretty good chance to probably sneak into the back end of the first round. But this once again, Andrew Berry says this was the person that we had targeted all along, and we were absolutely thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to draft him. He is not an in-the-box safety. He is a playmaking center fielder, so to speak. And we had obviously a big hole there in the when we lost Demarius Randall, who certainly, very similarly to Grant Delpit, had a much better 2018 season than a 2019 season. I think if his 2019 season, Demarius Randall would have had as good of a season as he had 2 years ago, we would have never gotten rid of him. But
maybe.
So
but I think there was also
Grant
with
Delpit is supposed to be filling, and he will get every opportunity right away to step into that starting role with the first team defense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was just going to add that maybe we would have kept him. I mean, there was some sort of ego, personality conflict. There was something behind the scenes that was more than his ability on the field. His play stepped back a little bit, but I think there was something else going on with Demarius Randall. I liked the guy. I liked the energy. Something changed. Something soured. I know a lot of people ended up in the doghouse of Freddie Kitchens, David Njoku, Demarius Randall, what have you. And ultimately, you didn't keep the head coach, so it doesn't matter who's in anybody's doghouse. You start from square one. But, yeah, there was definitely a step back. It was one of those things where a lot of the John Dorsey picks, in Dorsey we trust, if you will, they all looked great in the beginning. You know, this was like you go out to the club and you hook up. And then you roll over in the morning and the makeup's off and it's just a train wreck. You know, the Browns picked Baker Mayfield. He was fantastic, came out of the gate strong. He fell off. Demarius Randall, wow, we fleeced the Packers. He fell off. There were a lot of moves that Dorsey made that didn't really pan out over time, and we'll see what happens with Beckham. We'll see what happens with the rest of the moves. But ultimately, he's not here either. So we've turned the page. You know, we're on a totally different course right now. And, you know, it's just interesting. Both of these defensive backs, Grant Delpit and Greedy Williams, both from LSU. We have so much LSU talent on the Browns right now. You know, that's probably not by design. It's probably best player on the board. It's some circumstances working out, trading for Beckham, you know, trading for Jarvis. I think that was an amazing trade, by the way. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch how this is going to play out. How do you see this playing out with the defensive backfield? That was the position you played in high school, right? You were a DB?
Yeah, I played some DB. Played more offensive than defensively.
Oh, okay.
But
in the secondary, what are we going to do with Ward, with Greedy Williams, with Delpit? How do you see this kind of shaping up as a squad, as a unit, as a defensive secondary in general? Are you happy with this? Do we need some help still?
What I think that you're pretty well set. I mean, obviously injuries always play a role.
Sure.
But in terms of your starting lineup, you certainly like your corners with Ward and Williams as your starters. Probably Terrence Mitchell or newly signed Kevin Johnson are going to be your nickel and fourth corners, which you can obviously never have too many of those. Mm-hmm. And then Carl Joseph, who is a former first-round pick and was signed a one-year prove-it deal, probably to be our starting strong safety. And once again, Delpit brought in to be your free. And so I think that's probably your starting five if you're including Terrence Mitchell and or Kevin Johnson as the nickel corner there. So I think they feel pretty good about that room.
Okay, I want to go to the comments here. By the way, if you're not in our Facebook groups, one is called Strictly Browns, powered by The Unhappy Hour. The other, the flagship private group on Facebook is called The Unhappy Hour Sports Show, a support group. Please join those. If you want one of the fundraising pins, only 100 will ever be made. Please send me a direct message, type it in the comments, let me know. We'll get one of those out to you. We're asking for minimum $25 donations, and those are going to go to our graphic designer until his invoice is paid in full for his awesome graphic design work for our new The Unhappy Hour logo. I want to go to the comments in the group right now. Jason Mellon, what's up, Jason? He's saying, trading down, kind of going back to what we were discussing a few minutes ago, he says trading down gets you the player you want at a cheaper price plus something else you needed. Trading down is a part of the analytics of Moneyball. They are using their cap space money wisely. And he's adding now, talking about Grant Delpit, saying Joe Woods is the man to help these young DBs. That's his specialty. Yeah,
you hope so. You hope so. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, every new regime comes in, and there's always high hopes, and you always say, man, if anybody is going to be able to mold these guys, it's going to be this group. And so, you know, you definitely hope that that broken record, which we've heard many times before, holds true this time. You know, Steve Wilkes, our defensive coordinator last year, was really lauded, you know, after he had been fired after 1 year as a head coach at Arizona. Comes here to coach up our defense, and you know, frankly, I mean, say what you will about the offensive struggles, but you know, the defense for the Cleveland Browns really folded down the stretch last year, and really just let us down in some games that were very winnable against rookie quarterbacks. You know, guys making their first ever starts in the NFL, like the Buck Hodges or whatever from Pittsburgh, making him look great. That Kyle Allen or something Allen, quarterback that came in and started 2 games for Denver, and we lose to Denver. You know, so you know, I love the idea of having a young coach like Joe Woods coming in, but man, oh man, how many of these guys do you need before something finally clicks? It's just you know, I hope that he does very well, and he seems like he has that classic defensive coach, mean guy attitude. But you know, we'll see. I'm not ready to crown him the next great head coach or defensive coach until I really see it on the field.
Fair. That's very fair. And Brian May is watching over here. I think this is in the Strictly Browns group. He's saying both Ward and Greedy have got to stay healthy. Yeah, I mean, you could say that about every position.
That's
but
big.
Yeah, I mean, we look good now. How deep is how strong is the depth? If people need to plug and play and jump in to fill in, if you get dinged up, you get a concussion for half a game, you roll an ankle. Who knows? So yeah, obviously we're building something new. This is a new regime. I say this. I've said this with Hugh Jackson. I've said this with Freddie Kitchens. I've said this with all the Browns coaches. I want to see the regime with the general manager 3 years. Whatever, I don't care who you pick. I don't care what selection process you use. I just want to see a plan in place and stick with it for a couple of years to cycle through your players, go through the draft picks, go through the trades, go through the free agency. You have to have some sort of consistency. I also understand, jumping out of a sinking ship before it takes you down with it. I get it, but you can't do that every year and a half. You can't do that every half year. You can't do that every 2 years. It's not going to build for the future. So once again, that's my hope.
It certainly hasn't worked very well for us.
Exactly. So let's try something different, shall we? All right. So moving along here. Also, this is pick number 88. We mentioned this. This is acquired from the Saints as part of a draft day trade. I don't have it in front. Do you remember what we did with the Saints to get pick number 88 in the third round for Jordan Elliott out of Missouri? I'm trying to pull this up here.
I think we got I think we ended up getting like a third rounder next year from the Saints for this.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let me peel that up so we can be sure. But if you can talk for a second about Jordan Elliott, he's a defensive lineman out of Missouri. You know, it's a big school. It's not one of the powerhouse schools necessarily, but It's a big conference. Who did we get in Jordan
it's an
Elliott?
SEC school.
Yeah. What do you think of Jordan Elliott, the defensive lineman we picked up?
So, when you're starting to get into the third and fourth round guys, and so on, you get two classes of people. You get a few people that slid, that were expected to be picked a little bit higher, and maybe for various reasons. It might be injury concerns. It might be production, motor, whatever. They slid a little bit, and then you have the guys that are more diamonds in the rough, so to speak. You don't hear a bunch about these guys prior to the draft, and so it's kind of hard to know much about them. Actually, Jordan Elliott fits into the former group, where he actually was someone who, I believe it was Pro Football Focus actually had him rated as their a top 30 prospect, and Pro Football Focus, generally speaking, has. I tend to like how they rate players. So, but his thing, maybe you didn't. His might be kind of like productivity a little bit based, where he has all of the measurables that you really like, but maybe the production just wasn't there. Now, obviously, he's playing for Missouri, like you said. This isn't necessarily a powerhouse football team. Obviously, they're playing in the SEC, so they're playing against big-time competition. And he was first team all SEC as in his final year here. So this wasn't someone who was just a bum for 4 years or 3 years or whatever it was. So he is, I think that you would probably liken him more to a Danny Shelton type of player. So not necessarily someone who's going to provide a bunch of pressure up the middle, but is your typical, classic run-stuffing defensive tackle. And he'll have a good shot to be in that rotation. And we'll have a chance to learn a little bit behind Larry Ogunjobi. Haven't said that name for a while.
Yeah, I know.
Larry Ogunjobi and Sheldon Richardson. So he'll be a part of that rotation. And just like you can never have too many defensive backs, you can never have too many defensive tackles. It just seems like those guys get hurt, and the NFL as it's played today, you rotate guys in and out on the defensive line to keep them fresh. So that's what we'll see here. So good pick, but frankly, the further down you get with some of these guys, there's just not as much to say about them because there's just they're not as well known of players. This ESPN's been talking about Joe Burrow 23 out of every 24 hours for the last 4 months.
Joe Exotic.
They're not talking about Jordan Elliott quite as much.
All right, that's very fair. Yeah, do you like the nickname Joe Exotic? The Tiger King, played for LSU Tigers and now the Bengals.
I'm going to hopefully give Joe Burrow a little bit more credit than that.
Did you watch the Netflix series? Did you watch Tiger King?
Yes, I did. And it was a lot of fun in its time. I think that by the time you got to about episode 4, it started to go pretty dark, and didn't. I watched all of it, including that extra episode they released a few weeks ago, and enjoyed it. But yeah, they're just all terrible human beings as far as like the main characters of that docuseries, and not going to saddle Joe Burrow with the burden of having to have that nickname.
That's fair. I'll take that. To recap here, okay, Jason is saying in the chat room, he said, I have the same issue when trying to say Ogunjobi. So you're not the only one, Brandon. Not the only one. Brian
What about Tua? I'm going to put you on the spot. Say Tua's last name.
Tagovailoa.
So it took me a while. I finally got, Tagovailoa. I've finally gotten to a point where I can spit it out pretty easily. But that took some practice.
Tagovailoa. Yeah, I mean,
Tagovailoa. I've heard all three. I guess you've probably heard many different incarnations of that name. So
how about
I'm sure
Tua
he
T?
has too.
Tua
Which
T.
is why Tua is the kind of like the mainstay. Just call the dude by his first name and be done with it.
Madonna, Cher, Tua. Brian May is saying he's optimistic. He's saying this will be the season we expected last year. I love the optimism there. I'm, of course, predicting a 16-0 undefeated season followed by a Super Bowl. To recap here, I did pull up with the trade. This was something that I think was good here. In their second trade of the day, the Cleveland Browns agreed to swap picks with the New Orleans Saints. Moving down for the second time in this draft, the Browns agreed to move down to the 88th pick while adding a third-round pick in 2021. The Saints also got the Browns' 7th-round pick in the swap. So they got our 7th, but we got a third. You know, you can package things like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th-round picks into 4th, 5th, 3rd, 2nd. You know, you can play more with that, and then you don't really need these 7th-round picks. You kind of need impact players, so you got to accumulate a bunch and package them together to move up. And you got to be willing to slide back and take the gifts that are given to you. You know, it's not a gift. There was a sacrifice involved, but I do like trading back.
That third next year could possibly be used to move up 10 spots to get a guy that you really liked in the second round or something like that.
Exactly. I want to tell you real quick, this is just the pre-draft analysis of defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, since we don't know as much about him. His pre-draft analysis was he shoots his hands inside, he locates the ball, and gets off blocks in time to make the play. He has the first step quickness to make plays in the backfield. He flashes good power and the ability to win with his hands, rushing the passer. He closes well and tends to chase with above-average effort. Then in the post-draft analysis, it says, Elliott provides more defensive line depth for the Browns to shore up the interior, with Larry Ogunjobi entering his contract year. Elliott has the upside of a disruptive defensive tackle with the active feet and hands to win at the point of attack. So that is the player that we got there, and CBS gave that an A- of a pick.
Good.
And while we're talking about trading back and trading assets and accumulating people, the Browns, if we can go back to last year, this was a John Dorsey thing. We traded the extra running back that we had when we signed Kareem Hunt. We moved Duke Johnson, who had been unhappy for a while. He wanted more of a prominent role. And he actually ended up going down to the Houston Texans, and he got some playing time. He got some snaps. He got to play some meaningful games. It was this compensatory pick that we used at pick number 97 in the third round to get linebacker Jacob Phillips out of LSU. Do you have any thoughts on that trade in hindsight? Because that trade could have been different if Duke Johnson wouldn't have had as many snaps. So what do you make of the Duke Johnson trade in retrospect? And do you have any thoughts on this draft pick here, the linebacker out of LSU, Jacob Phillips?
Great trade for us, obviously, provided that Phillips ends up. I mean, when you're getting into some of these guys, once again, you're talking about guys that are going to be special teams contributors. This guy was overshadowed by Patrick Queen, who was the LSU linebacker who was picked a bit earlier in the draft. This guy isn't necessarily, he's a trying to think of the right word to use here. He's
developmental.
He's a piece. He's not a main. He's not the
ancillary,
the king or the queen on the chessboard right now. He's looked at as more like a bishop or something. He's not necessarily someone that's expected to wow you. But then again, Mac Wilson was a 5th-round pick last year and ended up playing some good starters minutes for us. So who knows? But they say they like his quickness. They say that they like his ability to cover players coming out of the backfield. So that's what they're going to use him for. And obviously, as I just said, he's a guy that has a chance to make an instant impact on special teams. And, that's going to be where all of these guys that you have from late third on are going to be probably asked to try to show up first, which is the mark of a good football team, that you draft guys for your special teams. And
I'll talk to you about Jacob Phillips, 6'3", 229 out of LSU, inside linebacker. His pre-draft analysis, he's tall and lean with good speed and explosive lower body strength. He's a disciplined run defender who understands fits, but he gets moved too often by bigger blockers. He's at his best in underneath zone coverage. He's too limited to be consistently trusted in man coverage. And he does not offer much as a pass rusher. He has experience covering kicks and punts too. Okay, so that's something there. The post-draft analysis, now that he's gone to the Browns, Joe Schobert is gone. He signed with Jacksonville. Christian Kirksey is gone. He signed with Green Bay after the Browns cut him. So Cleveland had to address a run defense that ranked 30th in the league last season. Look for Phillips to compete for a starting outside linebacker job flanking Mack Wilson and to make an immediate impact on special teams. So, yeah, that's pretty much what we're looking at there. By the way, if you have any comments in the chat room, type them now. Let me know. Christopher Ford, how are you, sir? He says drafting players to compete with our starters, not just back them up. He gives the draft grade an A. So, you know, there's a lot of positivity around this draft, and I'm happy about that. I'm really happy. Let me click over here into the 4th round, start moving a little faster on some of these players because we don't know as much about them. But we'll tell you a few things. Pick number 115 overall, 9th in the 4th round. The Browns went ahead and took a tight end, Harrison Bryant, 6'5", 243, out of Florida Atlantic. What do you think about this pick, Brandon? I know Stefanski likes to use the tight ends.
This is a guy that is more likely to be a backup to David Njoku than to be a backup to Austin Hooper. He is more likely, he is, I guess as of right now, a pure receiving tight end. Based upon what I've heard, this was supposed to be kind of a weak year for tight ends. But he actually was the first tight end in the FBS to have a 1,000-yard season since 2013. So consider that what you want to make of it. I believe he also won the, I believe it's the Mackey Award as the nation's top tight end this year. So once again, probably looking at being a backup to Njoku. Obviously, Njoku missed some time last year, so he certainly could have the chance to make his mark. But probably a guy too. If maybe he's not necessarily blocking all the time on inline, offensive plays. Maybe he's a guy that once or twice during the season can kind of sneak out, maybe be lined up as a blocking tight end on a field goal try or a punt or something like that. Maybe sneaks out and gets you a first down on a fake or something.
Now, can you tell me why you said you think he's a backup to one of our tight ends but not the other? Because I think the tight end position is a little more complicated than some people realize. You see Njoku playing a different role than Hooper. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Hooper is more of a classical blocking tight end, and Njoku is more of your athletic freak. And with this new player, Harrison Bryant, once again, I know I've never seen this person play. I know so little about him, but based upon what I read, he has a little bit of a slighter frame, has room to put some meat on his bones if he is going to slide in and be asked to block more. So that's not something that happens overnight, and especially not being able to participate in the team's off-season program where you're there around the team and working out at the team facility and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Putting on weight for some of these younger guys is going to be a little bit more difficult. A lot of guys don't have gyms in their homes. A lot of guys go to fitness centers and go to workout facilities and stuff like that. So, you might not have the body development in some of these rookies that you could get in maybe a 6-month time period if the guys already had access to the facility.
That is a good point. That is a really good point. About Harrison Bryant, the pre-draft analysis, it says he's a light receiving tight end with below average length and good top end speed. He's an instinctive and slippery open field runner with the strength to pick up yards after initial contact. He's fast enough to make plays down the seam. Bryant made some tough catches, but we also counted 3 drops against Ohio State in 2019. So, anyway, we'll see.
I guess I did see him play, huh?
Yeah, I know. That's what I was going to jump in and say, but I figured I'd wait. No need to cut you off for that one. But, I don't remember seeing him play either. I don't remember playing Florida Atlantic, honestly. You know, these 70...
Yeah, that was like our season opener, I feel like.
Yeah, these 70-3 games, I tend to block them out sometimes. But Christopher...
So he didn't make that big of an impact, is what you're saying.
and who knows? I don't have the score in front of me. Maybe they did put up some points in that one. But in the chat room here, let's see here. Christopher Ford is saying Austin Hooper is the missing link. That's going to open up everything. Do you think Austin Hooper is going to dress...
Austin Hooper is like a 4th, 5th-year player and developed into the player he is.
Right.
No one's saying that Harrison Bryant can't work on his craft for a few years, and by the time year 3 comes around, and maybe he is a guy. I mean, when we had talked before, I had used the comparison of Jordan Cameron.
Yes, you did.
And so, maybe
not to be confused with Cameron Jordan.
Guys in 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, these are developmental players. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, you really hit, and a guy comes in and is really ready to do something right away. But, I mean, if these guys are going to stick in the NFL, it's through hard work and it's through special teams. And, in a few years, you get your chance.
All right. In the chat room here. Oh, by the way, I'm going to talk about John Toburin's comment in a second. But what do you think Austin Hooper is going to do to change the dynamics of this offense? Because Chris is saying that this is going to open up everything in all caps. I feel like that is possible. I feel like having that reliable safety valve and extra blocking, with the talented running backs that we have. We're only talking, you're trying to get 3.5 yards per play. What do you think Austin Hooper is going to bring to the Browns, to Baker Mayfield, to Stefanski, to the running game, to the blocking game? Because this also improves the offensive line by getting a blocking tight end. Are you as excited about Hooper as some people are?
Well, I think what you really get from Hooper that is a bonus maybe from what you would get with Njoku is because of the fact that Hooper is well known as already being a very competent to above average blocking tight end. You can have him in on the line, and you can still be able to run your regular offense. You can do a running play. You can have him get off the line and get out down the seam a little bit. Whereas with Njoku, because he did not have the same sort of basically, if it was an easy tell, if they were moving him in to be on the line, chances are he was going to be blocking. And it's because of the fact that they never really trusted him to be able to shed linebackers right off of the line, or to shed defensive ends right off the line. And so with Hooper, I think that there's more of that trust there that he can get off the line and make a play. And so you can have him in line blocking, which the whole idea of this wide zone offense is the idea that your run plays look like pass plays and pass plays look like run plays. Mm. And so if you can have him in right on the line of scrimmage blocking one play and then have him in the exact same position going out for a pass the next play, it keeps the defenders on their toes. And Njoku is more one-dimensional in that way, more athletic than Austin Hooper, absolutely, but is somebody who's going to benefit more from having a little bit more space to operate in than what Hooper would need.
Okay, gotcha. Going to the comments, Christopher Ford is saying that Hooper stays healthy and he's developed a good rapport with his quarterbacks. He's always open and he's going to get a lot of attention, which will open up the field. I want to talk about John Toburin's comments here. He's saying that this is a smart draft from the Browns all around, but you can't grade it for 3 years. Also, remember, Wills is only 20 years old, so when he gives up a sack, don't call him a bust, Brian. All right. Well, hey, look, if Danny Carey can be the best drummer on the planet at his age, there's no reason for Lars Ulrich to be complaining about losing some of his chops at his age. But I digress.
Doesn't Lars Ulrich have like some major hearing loss?
I don't know. That's possible.
I think that's a thing.
Okay, well,
I think he actually is like partially deaf at this point. I think that's a thing.
Okay,
so,
well, that would make him
imagine that being in Metallica and having some hearing loss, huh?
Yeah, I know. Go figure.
Yeah, you'd think they play loud music or something.
How strange. It's a conspiracy. No, I won't call him a bust. He's only 20. Fine. I mean, whatever. I mean, obviously every player is going to develop. Baker Mayfield needs a little bit of time to develop. Peyton Manning didn't have a great rookie season. It's fine. I know that it takes a little bit of time for everybody to hit their prime, hit their stride, and get going. John, I'll get to your second comment here about DPJ being a steal in college. Playing at that team up north. But I'm looking at this here about the Browns. I just want to talk because we're wrapping this up. We have two more picks to discuss. But as we discuss the roster, just a couple of reminders. The Browns had a 7th-round pick sent to the Broncos in a trade for fullback Andy Janovich. You know, that's part of the move that was made on this team. And you know, you want to talk about the sexy stuff. You want to talk about Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry. Do you have any thoughts, Brandon, about what bringing in a fullback like Andy Janovich is going to do? Once again, this is something that helps the blocking, but it's not one of the 5 offensive linemen. Do you have any thoughts on reworking that fullback position back into the game for the Browns?
You know, I'll be honest. You know, I think that you're probably not going to see Janovich on the field quite as much if you have these tight ends on the field. Mm-hmm. I think that Janovich is going to be probably a short yardage player that they put him in on tight sets, short yardage sets. I mean, supposedly he can possibly be Medina County's own Kyle Juszczyk. I believe he went to Cloverleaf High School and is the fullback for the Niners. You know, I do think that there is a possibility that he can be used in a similar way. I'll be interested to see what they do with the fullback in this offense. You every few years we get a guy and you think that we're going to, you know, Danny Vitale was our guy a few years ago. Remember Lawrence Vickers way back when? Yeah. And generally speaking, their ultimate impact on the game is a lot more on special teams than it is in the actual offense. So I'll reserve comment until I actually see what they actually plan on doing with him and how much he's going to be on the field. I really don't know. I mean, when you have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb both in their prime and both healthy, those are the 2 running backs that I want on the field. No offense to Andy Janikowski, but I would much rather have those 2 guys on the field at the same time than you know, a fullback who was, you know, just a guy, you know. Yeah, that's what he is. He's a guy. He's a good guy, but he's a guy.
Well, once again, rotating players in could give the ability to have Chubb on the field for one play with Janovich blocking. Then the next play you could have Janovich in, and then you could have Hunt in, and then on the next play you could get rid of Janovich, and you have your 2 playmakers. You know, there's a lot of options. I feel I'm very excited to see what Stefanski does. He's the offensive-minded guy. He got here for a reason, and it's because he knows how to put together packages and schemes. And you've seen the Minnesota Vikings be competitive. You've seen them score a lot of points. And I'm just curious to see how these pieces are all going to fit. Rounding out... Yes? Oh, I thought you were trying to say something there. Rounding out a couple...
I was just agreeing.
Okay, gotcha. Rounding out a couple of transactional moves that the Browns made, just to refresh your memory... the Browns did trade Jannard Avery to the Eagles, got a 4th-round pick back. Traded Austin Corbett. Man, that was the offensive tackle that I thought was he a tackle or a guard? I think he was tackle, right?
He was supposed to be the left tackle of the future. He was the number 1 pick in the 2nd round.
What happened with him?
Never really developed, at least not so far. They ended up kicking him in, wanting him to be the right guard in his 2nd year, and he couldn't do that either. So
disappointing.
Here we are.
Yeah, that was another in Dorsey we trust fail. Just, you know, I'm not trying to do this to bash Dorsey. I'm just saying we need to be consistent when we remember these people and what they did and what they didn't do. For every Nick Chubb You had an Austin Corbett, massive fail. We ended up bailing on him for a 5th-round pick. Sliding back for the number 33 pick for a 5th-round pick? That is garbage. That is a loss. You accumulate these draft picks so that you can score on them. Obviously, you're not going to be 100%, but that really hurt. That hurt the Browns. That hurt me because I love drafting linemen, building linemen up, getting them into the system, and then plugging and playing, and then they can be the studs, the young, healthy studs, to anchor. They're the complete anchor for all of the offense. Anyway, I just wanted to remind people about that, and then the Browns did get a pick. What was the Wyatt Teller deal with the Bills? I don't even remember this one.
I don't know.
Cares?
I mean, just one of those things. I'm not really too sure what came and what went.
All right, let's do this because
that deal.
We'll wrap this up here. 2 players coming in. Nick Harris. Now, this is the 5th-round pick. Number 160 overall. He is the center coming out of Washington. What do you make of this guy? You know, I know you're saying like picks 3, 4, 5, you know, in these later rounds that you don't really expect too much from him. But any thoughts on Nick Harris, 6'1", 302 pounds out of Washington?
Short guy. So that was one of the knocks on him. You know, as I say this, not being 6'1", and that would be marvelous to be 6'1", but
Right.
Short for NFL line standards, and so that's why they really feel that center is going to be where he belongs. You know, you need a developmental guy, and they say that he can play all 3 inside positions. Obviously, left guard with Joel Bitonio is not a need, but there still are some question marks there. You had mentioned Wyatt Teller. There's still some question marks there at right guard, and so you know he could be a guy, have a chance to compete a little bit, but in the meantime, you know, provide you quality depth, and a guy that maybe 2-3 years down the line when maybe our time with J.C. Treader is through, maybe he's someone that can step in and fill in that role at center for you.
Yeah, I like offensive line. I like offensive linemen that can play multiple positions. It's, you know,
sure.
Anytime you have the right player on your staff to jump in case someone rolls an ankle, tweaks a knee, you know, hurts an arm, whatever. It's important to have those people in your room, and I think it's important that you have people that this general manager and this head coach had the opportunity to discuss scheme, plan, package, ideals, you know, ideology with. I think it's good. So Nick Harris, his pre-draft analysis, he's an off-the-wall blocker with initial quickness to get to his position. He's got the potential to develop into an above-average second-level blocker. He gets set quickly and is athletic enough to mirror in pass pro. There's not much pop in his punch, and he's a waist bender in pass pro. He's tough and he fights, but he gives ground to power rushers at times. So once again, this is a guy we'll just say, give him to Bill Callahan. Let's get him into the building whenever we're allowed to do that, and get things started. Oh, hey, talking about the quarantine stuff, Brandon, why are these professional players not just quarantining for 14 days and then living at the facility? I know it's a little off, but we did mention getting these guys in the weight room. I mean, if you're a millionaire athlete and you depend on these things, why can't you just say goodbye to your family for a month and just quarantine, go to the facility, and then live there for a little bit while you learn your craft? I don't understand why the NBA playoffs aren't going with 14 days. Just live at the Hilton or the Marriott and then get to work. The NHL, same thing. Why are the playoffs not happening? Did you have a thought on that?
You know, just a quick thought, because I actually am running out of time myself
okay.
here. I got about 5 minutes. I actually saw that the NBA, in areas where the shelter-in-place orders are being lifted, are allowing their players to go back into the facilities. So I think that you will start to see more of that in the coming weeks, or at least I hope that is the case. I think that the whole idea behind it is, this is purely speculation, but that you're considered a non-essential business, and so those facilities were closed, first. And so now with some of these shelter-in-place orders being lifted and people being able to go back out to some, again, you'll start to see some of that happening where players are going to be able to access these facilities in terms of the NBA. Now, with the NFL, this is something I do know for a fact. And once again, I don't have a lot of time to talk at this point, but the NFL has said no matter what that they are not going to allow teams that, like, say that Ohio lifts its shelter-in-place order, but California still has its order in place. The Browns will not be allowed to access their facility before the Niners, Rams, and Chargers are allowed to access theirs. It has to be an all-or-nothing proposition. But they said, so if every state that or every area that has an NFL team lifts those orders, then all the players will be able to start coming up with those types of things, quarantining, living in a hotel, getting access to the facilities, those kinds of things. I mean, there's a lot of people that are working in different places. Think about Walmart workers. They weren't quarantining for 14 days before reporting to work. They're getting their temperatures taken every day. They're having to fill out questionnaires and stuff like that. And so, there might be a little bit of leeway for that coming, rather than strictly making these guys have to sequester themselves in a hotel room for the next 6 months.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because places like California do things with the NCAA saying, hey, you can pay your student athletes now. California, their mayor, Garcetti, and Gavin Newsom, they're on record saying there's not going to be any sports until 2021. So, I don't know how long these, like you said, until every team can go back, no teams can go back. Well, if you have places like California that really just don't want to open up or they don't think it's a good idea just now, you could have one state derail the entire season for the NBA, for the NHL, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to cover. We don't have time today. We'll get to it. I'll delve into that a little bit more in detail moving forward. It's very fascinating, by the way. But let's get to our final draft pick. This is something maybe that a lot of people want to discuss. In the chat room, John Toburin, he's a big fan of that team up north, also a Browns fan, so he's not totally irredeemable. He says, DPJ is a steal. We're talking about Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's watched all the games. He says his numbers in college were low due to crappy quarterback play and awful play calling. Yeah. Definitely a huge upside there. Jason is saying, one more question. I came in late and I had to leave for a second. I'm not sure if this topic was covered, but is DPJ the steal everyone thinks he was? What do you think of Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver, that team up north, 6'2", 212 pounds?
I think with Donovan Peoples-Jones, what you're seeing is that the depth of this wide receiver class. This was something that definitely was talked about by many prognosticators leading up to the NFL draft, was the fact that you're going to be able to get guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th round that in other drafts would have gone in the 2nd and 3rd round. So I think that you say that it's certainly a possibility that he ends up being a steal, and hopefully he'll end up being a very productive player. He'll have a chance to. That one is interesting, where you have a 6th round guy that will have a chance to step in and compete for meaningful minutes, because frankly we don't have a 3rd wide receiver of note at the moment. So he'll have a chance to make his mark there, and we'll see how much he can handle. He certainly has some excellent pros in front of him that he can learn from in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. If anyone's going to be able to teach him how to be a professional wide receiver, those are good guys to be able to emulate. So, I don't know. We'll see what we get out of him. I mean, he was a guy that some people pegged as going as early as the 3rd round. We got him in the 6th. We'll see what happens. Supposedly he has some return abilities too. So we had signed JoJo Natson, who is like a strictly a return specialist. So we'll see if this is something that Donovan Peoples-Jones could push him for some minutes. Obviously, we had a guy from Michigan a few years ago with some return ability. Didn't really ever do much for us on that side of things with Jabril Peppers. So, I don't know. I mean, I like the pick. He's got prototypical size, and when you're picking a guy in the 6th round, and you get a guy who went to a big-time school, had some, certainly played in some very, very big games. I mean, he wasn't competing for national championships the way that the Buckeyes and Alabama and LSU were, but Michigan is a big-time program. Say what you will about their offense and getting the most out of some of their players, but he was a 5-star recruit out of Detroit. Is staying close to home here in Cleveland, and certainly knows the type of working class work ethic we have here in the Rust Belt area, and we'll see what we get from him.
Yeah, and like you said, with the wide receiver position, I'm pulling up our depth chart here. We have Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. Our backups, Kaderil Hodge, Damian Ratley, Taywan Taylor. That's it. I think it's so weird that Hollywood Higgins did so well for us and then just ended up in the doghouse getting no playing time. That's a whole other subject on its own. So, yeah, I'm excited for this pick. I do think it's a steal because you have Brandon, you would say he has a high ceiling potential, especially given that there's not a lot of competition for snaps at that wide receiver 3 spot. High ceiling for this guy, right?
Yeah. With that said, Ratley did play some good minutes for us last year.
Right,
I like Ratley. I kind of forgot about him.
Yeah, I'm not going to say he's trash. I'm just saying, kind of like to piggyback off where you were at. He has the potential to get some snaps. He can compete for some playing time. He could be in certain packages and make contributions. And Baker Mayfield is one of those quarterbacks that doesn't lock in on one guy. He peppers it around wherever people are available. Oh, and that reminds me, that one comment on that short center that we drafted. I think having a shorter stature might help Baker Mayfield, actually. If the guy ever, moved over to a guard and needed to play, every inch that you're not having to look over someone, it might help you out. So who knows? All right, well, Brandon, I'll let you get going here. I know you have a few things to attend to. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Strictly Browns here on the Unhappy Hour, powered by the New American Media. Do you have any final thoughts? In something, a parting shot, a piece of wisdom, a joke, a final way to sum this up, this whole 2020 draft? Take us out, sir.
No, I mean, I think the ultimate hope is that you got better as a football team. Obviously, all the other teams in our division got better too, so we're going to need to get at it. It's just going to be interesting to see when you can actually get these guys in the facility to actually see how they stack up against the guys you've already got. So stay tuned. We'll see how long that ends up being.
And I'm sorry, Brandon, there's one question I absolutely had to get to, and I'm just now remembering it. The Ravens drafted a running back, and it made me really angry. Do you have any thoughts on the Ohio State situation? Any thoughts here on the travesty that occurred? Because I can no longer root for J.K. Dobbins, and that pains me so much.
This is what I'll say. I think Andrew Berry was asked about this. Is that you hope that that some of these players don't necessarily go to the teams in your division, but obviously they have the same opportunity to draft players you do, and so there's not much you can do about it. Ironically, it's an Ohio State running back who is obviously the bane of the University of Michigan's existence, and he gets drafted by a Harbaugh. So there's certainly something to that as well that makes you chuckle a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, I wish J.K. Dobbins success. I guess I love the Buckeyes. I like to root for the players as they go to their different teams, but man, I don't root for anything about Baltimore or the Ravens. So, all right, B, thank you so much for your time. I will let you go. I appreciate you joining us today on Strictly Browns, and when is the next milestone for us? When do you want to talk again? Like, how many months do we wait before there's relevant information, barring a big trade or something? When do we get back at this again? When do we talk some more Browns?
I don't know, because we don't know anything right now. So I think we just got to wait and see.
All right, that's a deal. To be continued, Brandon. I appreciate you. You have a great day, sir.
All right, bye.
All right, there he goes, everybody. Brandon Odell, very special guest, one of my best friends in the world. This guy, what was it? Jeez, a month and a half ago. my mom passed away, unfortunately. And yeah, he found out, and he said, "All right, I'll be there." And he lost some partial sight in one of his eyes, Brandon. So driving is not really something that's fantastic. It's not a fantastic activity for him to participate in. Let's just say that. And he just made the drive. It was like 3.5 hours. Just came on in for one of the services and showed his love, showed his support. I remember I did the same. His mom passed away as well, and we're both unfortunately in that Lost Our Mothers Club. But yeah, I love Brandon like a brother. So it's always good to have a chance to talk to B. As I said, we used to do the B&B radio show, the Wake Up Show with Brian and Brandon on WFAL, Falcon Radio. What was it, 670 a.m.? 640 a.m.? 640 a.m. WKFI. No, now I'm confusing KFI. Anyway, we used to do the Brian and Brandon Wake Up Show, the B&B Wake Up Show. we would do, what was that, Friday nights? We'd do Friday night shows at 3 a.m., from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. We would stumble in there after the parties and the bars. We liked the 3 a.m. slot because we got to do it freeform. If you did some of the other, I think every other time slot, or most of the other time slots, you had to play certain cuts. So you'd get 15 tracks. You had to play this cut or that, and you get to pick your 3 or 4 favorites out of it. I didn't want to do that. I thought the selection, college radio was just, I wasn't a fan. But this was the time, I mean, you had Incubus, Korn, Limp Bizkit, talk about 97, 98, 99, Stained. This is all that new metal, that rap metal, that fusion, that new rock, that alternative, post-alternative. And I loved it. We used to get Sony, Columbia, Epic, and Linda Feather. She was awesome. A rep that we made a contact with. But we'd get all this new music, and we'd just come in and we'd play whatever the heck we wanted. Those were the good old days. Those were the good old days, but that was 1997. So when you see me today, realize, I don't know, I've just, what am I? I've enjoyed broadcasting for a long time. And Brandon's been a part of that journey for that whole time. I guess not the whole time, because I was broadcasting and I used to read the school announcements and broadcast some football games for like the JV teams and call out on the loudspeaker, running back number 70. How would a running back be number 73? Anyway, you get my point. But yeah, Brandon's been a part of this broadcasting journey for a long time. Back to the Browns. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. With our remaining time here, if you have any other questions, let me know. Make sure you're inviting your friends to these groups. You unfollowed J.K. Dobbins on all social media. Okay, that is funny. The schedule release. All right, when does a schedule release come out? I don't know when that is. And I'm so happy that Tobiern says that's definitely a big steal for... Man, that LA Rams logo is trash. Ugh, that cannot be a thing. All right. Let me round this out. Let me just kind of go through some interesting stuff here. Yeah, so the Packers got running back A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. That'll be interesting to watch. I don't want to say they wasted their first round pick. It doesn't help Aaron Rodgers. So with their second pick, they definitely got him a running back, a weapon to use. Who are some of the other notable? Ezra Cleveland. I didn't expect the Browns to get 2 offensive tackles after bringing in Jake Conklin. Conklin was. You always have to look at the NFL draft as the draft and free agency. What has been added? What has gone away? What did you add? What did you lose? I don't know, but I'm silly that way. I want top-notch offensive line talent, and so I had my eye on Ezra Cleveland, Boise State offensive tackle. He went to Minnesota. Who are some other interesting names? Obviously, I said J.K. Dobbins, pick number 55, number 23 in the second round, went to the Ravens, former Ohio State running back. Here's something that I was very interested in. I was shocked to see so many running backs taken ahead of J.K. Dobbins. Cam Akers from Florida State went to the Los Angeles Rams. Jonathan Taylor, as we discussed with that trade with the Browns and the Colts. Running back out of Wisconsin, Jonathan Taylor, goes to the Colts at pick number 41, ninth in the second round. Another running back was taken before. That's DeAndre Swift out of Georgia. He went to the Detroit Football Lions, pick number 35. Actually, let me scroll back to the first round here, doing this overview. Yeah, and don't forget that there was another running back taken before J.K. Dobbins. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Helaire? He was picked at number 32 by the freaking Champs. And the Champs don't really... They used to have Kareem Hunt. You know, they've kind of plugged and played some players and whatever, but you put a first-round pick out of LSU. This is the... Let me just triple check here. He was the first running back to come off the board. I mean, that's fascinating. You know, the value of the running back position has changed over the years. Devalued, maybe? I mean, you used to have the Emmitt Smith, the workhorse back, that would play every snap. Now you have these rotational things and package things and scheme things, and, you know, you don't really have the ground and pound, the grind it out, the Barry Sanders. You're in there all, you know, loss of 3, no gain of 2, blah, blah, blah. Most of it is nothing until he hits the home run, the 71-yard touchdown run. He'd end up with 180 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. You're like, how? With his stat line, he had 3 big plays, the rest were trash. But that's a volume thing. That's what I'm getting at, is that there were volume runners in the past, and we don't really have volume runners right now. And you've seen it. You've seen the lifespan. Let me not say lifespan. The career window for the running back. It's probably shorter than the average position. You have Tom Brady. He's played for 20 years. Obviously, most quarterbacks don't. But, you know, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. You really do. You see quarterbacks that can play for 2 decades. You don't see a lot of running backs that do it. They just take so much abuse, so many hits, so many piles, so many tweaks and twists and weird angles and tweaks and injuries. And so it's almost like you got to kind of turn and burn your running backs. You got to either keep them fresh, or you have them for 2, 3, 4 years, and then you get another one. And you don't really get to go for 15 years with the same running back. So the value on the position has changed. But hey, when you're the Super Bowl champs and you can get the number 1 running back off the board to pair up with Pat Mahomes, that's pretty incredible. I'm just surprised that so many went ahead of J.K. Dobbins. I don't know. Time will tell. But gosh, it feels like the Ravens got a steal, and that pains me to say that. Ravens also took Patrick Queen, the linebacker out of LSU. All right, what were some other interesting ones? Yeah, Jordan Love, the quarterback out of Utah State. Once again, at 35 years old, the Packers did this. To Brett Favre, they drafted Aaron Rodgers out of UCLA, and they sat him. They let him sit for a while. It's what the franchise did before. It worked, and it looks like they're doing it again. So I'd actually love to see... I saw Aaron Rodgers join the Pat McAfee show, or the Pat McAfee podcast or whatever, and it was right before this happened. And then everyone was saying, call him back. They're like, no, we're not going to do that to him. But I would love to hear what Aaron Rodgers has to say. I know it's been a few days. I probably could have found this, but I haven't seen it yet. So if you have it, post a link to tell me in the comments section on YouTube. By the way, if you're not on the YouTube channel, we're going to be adding a new YouTube channel. We have it. It's just switching between 2 YouTube channels has become I'll get to it. I won't bore you with the details, but follow us right now on YouTube. It's youtube.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. youtube.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. You can support us by watching videos there, and if you let the advertisements play, it's like tossing a penny in the wishing well. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. If you like what we're doing and you'd like to donate, let me know. Anyway, it's just going to be interesting to see what happens with the Green Bay Packers there. What are some other interesting names here? Wide receiver Justin Jefferson went to the Vikings. Jalen Reagor, wide receiver, went from TCU, went to the Eagles. Damon Arnett, cornerback, Ohio State, the Ohio State University, went to the Raiders. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, went to Oklahoma. Jerry Jeudy from Alabama went to the Broncos, wide receiver. Wide receiver Henry Ruggs III goes to the Raiders. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we're always, with this Jedrick Wills pick at offensive tackle for the Browns, I think we're probably always going to compare him to three other people. You're going to look at what Gettleman did up there with the New York Football Giants, taking Andrew Thomas out of Georgia, the offensive tackle, taking him number 4. I think we're always going to kind of look at that and compare him to Jedrick Wills Jr. Hopefully he's a 15-year player and a first ballot Hall of Famer like Joe Thomas. We're going to compare Jedrick Wills to Mekhi Becton, offensive tackle from Louisville. He got flagged. I think it was a drug issue right during the time of the draft. It was unfortunate, not good, not smart. Who knows? And then Tristan Wirfs, the offensive tackle from Iowa. Those big corn-fed Iowa boys. That was a smart move. Smart move. At number 13, you had better do whatever you can to protect Mr. Tom Brady down there in Tampa, or else this was a train wreck. So I love that pick for Tampa. You just take the best lineman you can. You gotta hope that player pans out. So other notables, obviously Joe Burrow won. I mean, what do you say? He's done everything. He's anchoring a new. I'm curious to see if Andy Dalton, if he goes to another team, or if he stays with the Bengals. Maybe he could start the season as a starter and sit as the backup. Kind of red shirt Burrow. Who knows? We'll see how that plays out. I'm seeing that it looks like the Saints are going to sign Taysom Hill to a $21 million, I think, 3-year through 2021. So it's a 2-year deal, I think. 2020, then I guess, yeah. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me right now. But they're also going to sign Jameis Winston, perhaps, it looks like. So it's just interesting to watch the quarterback carousel. Phillip Rivers going from the Chargers. Now he's on the Colts, who drafted a quarterback. Just to recap here, a couple of interesting picks. Obviously, Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State, going to the Washington Redskins. Jeff Okudah from Ohio State, the cornerback, going to the Lions. It's just so crazy to think that 3 former Buckeyes went number 1, number 2, number 3. Kudos to the Ohio State University, to the Buckeyes, to Urban Meyer, to Ryan Day. Fantastic recruiting, fantastic coaching, great program. I am blessed to be a Buckeye fan. The Buckeyes have given me the consistent pedigree, the consistent high-level franchise that I've been craving my whole life for the Browns to provide. So luckily it's not feast or famine entirely. I've been able to enjoy. This run from the Buckeyes has just been phenomenal. A couple of missed opportunities and a couple of bad calls away from having several more national championships. Definitely a possibility, but to get multiple championships in my lifetime, pretty happy with that. The quarterback carousel, like I said, Tua Tagovailoa going to the Dolphins. Justin Herbert replacing Phillip Rivers there with the Chargers. So those are interesting. Let me click on the second round, because interesting players came off. You got Michael Pittman, Pittman Jr. from USC. What do we got here? Okay. Yeah, just all those running backs coming off the board before J.K. Dobbins. Time is going to tell. I think Jason was pretty correct. Wait, who has a Karen haircut? Do I have a Karen haircut? Who has a Karen haircut? What up, Adam? What up, John? Thanks for watching. Yeah, anyway, it's a 3-year process. Or whoever said it's a 3-year process. Maybe that was John. Was that John? Yeah, John said it. He said you can't judge a draft for 3 years. I agree. I agree. But just some other notables here. You know, Antoine Winfield Jr., he would have looked nice, but the Browns had their choice, and they picked Delpit. You're going to compare those players throughout their career and go, you had a chance to draft so-and-so and you didn't. Or, hey, we could have taken that guy, but we got the right guy. That's what I want. That's what I'm hoping happens. Chase Claypool, wide receiver out of Notre Dame, goes to the Squealers. So he's someone we're going to keep our eye on. You know, they tend to develop wide receivers really well over there. Interesting pick. You know, the Eagles are not far removed from having been to a Super Bowl. They just signed Carson Wentz. But I'll tell you what, they must be pretty concerned about his injuries. He signed a big deal. He's getting some money, Carson Wentz. They drafted Jalen Hurts, the quarterback out of Oklahoma. You know, are you going to play him in trick packages like a Taysom Hill? Anyway, something to follow up on, something to keep your eye on. The health of Carson Wentz, the playing time of Jalen Hurts. It will be interesting. Let me go to the third round, because there was a couple of... I just love following the quarterbacks. You know, because quarterbacks, you know, they're the face of the franchise. We all know this. I'm not breaking any new ground. Ohio State, Devon Hamilton, defensive tackle, goes to the Jaguars. I like following Buckeyes, too. Jonah Jackson, offensive guard, he goes to the Lions. Good for him. What are we looking at here? Quarterbacks. I'm looking for Buckeyes, and I'm looking for quarterbacks. Or running backs. Appalachian State, Darrington Evans, running back. He's going to the Titans. You know, someone that can play along with Derrick Henry. Malik Harrison, he's somebody... Actually, I think Jason in here. Jason really wanted to get Malik Harrison, who, guess where he went? The freaking Ravens. I don't want Buckeyes. There's got to be a rule to keep Buckeyes out of the Ravens. I know there can't be a rule. It's just, that's me being me. All right, I guess no more court. Let me go to the round 4 because, you know, and I love this guy's name. Where's he at? Where did he get taken? Okay, so Jacob Eason, by the way, quarterback out of Washington, he's over there with the Colts. That's a good situation when you can sit behind Phillip Rivers. I'm not going to say Phillip Rivers in his prime. I'm going to say Phillip Rivers at the tail end of a pretty doggone successful, consistent, steady, decent to good career. You have a veteran you can learn from, which is why I think it's great that Baker Mayfield has Case Keenum now. Now, I'm not saying Case Keenum has had the career of Phillip Rivers. What I'm saying is Case Keenum has a history with the head coach, with Kevin Stefanski. So the hope is going to be that you're going to have that veteran presence to teach you, to help you, to get you where you're going, and to be your mentor. I don't know Drew Stanton. I like that this has happened this way. Keep an eye on Anthony McFarland Jr., running back out of Maryland. He's gone to the Steelers, so we're going to see him twice a year. Interesting that the Jets took a quarterback in the 4th round. Are they not sold on Sam Darnold? Something to keep your eye on. They took James Morgan out of Florida International, quarterback. Who else here? Scrolling through. I do think it's cool that the Redskins have Dwayne Haskins and Chase Young. You know, it's cool when you can keep players from the same team and you put them on the next team. That's just neat. I'm a fan. DJ Dallas, running back out of Miami, goes to the Seahawks. So I thought they would. It could have been a really nice opportunity for them to take J.K. Dobbins. There were certain teams I had my eye on going, all right, I could see him going there. Just didn't work out that way. All right, we're going to round this out, and we're going to wrap this up. If you have any more comments, let me know. What else here? There we go. Jake Fromm, State Farm. The quarterback of Georgia, Jake Fromm. He went to the Bills. Now, don't the Bills have a quarterback? Obviously, you're getting, later rounds, you're allowed to draft. I guess anytime you draft a quarterback, it's weird. You have to wonder if there's a plan in place for succession. Are you trying to groom the next pick? Are you not sold on? So the Browns didn't get a quarterback. We're going to ride or die in this decade with Baker Mayfield. Maybe not. Maybe we cut ties in a year or two if it doesn't pan out and we've seen all we need to see. But it seems like we are happy with the number 1 overall pick. We weren't happy with his regression last year, but there were injuries, there were personality problems, there were coaching problems. There were all sorts of problems last year. You can't just blame it on Baker. But anyway, I'll keep my eye on Jake from State Farm over there. And yeah, we'll round it out with that. Let me just make sure there's no breaking news headlines. Yeah, Louisville's wide receiver signee Rentz, 18 years old, was just shot and killed. So there's that. All right, let's stop it there. I appreciate you guys for watching, joining me, talking Browns. Very happy. So eager to get sports back. Baseball, basketball, football. Come on. Let's go. If you got to play games without fans in the stadium or in the seats, do it. Just play the games. This isn't rocket science. Hey, honey, our NBA team is in the playoffs. We have to go quarantine at the Marriott for 2 weeks, and then we can play in a stripped-down version of the playoffs without fans so that we can sell the advertising revenue so that I can keep making the mortgage payments on this $7 million house. Is this conversation not happening? If you don't get that advertising revenue, if you're not getting that money coming in, you can only push the season so far. At some point, you can't make up these games. Baseball cannot play a doubleheader every day. Can they? I don't know. Maybe they can. That would be wild, actually. But anyway, bring sports back. I'm ready for it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, youtube.com/TheNewAmericanMedia. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. Facebook groups, 2 of them, join them. The Unhappy Hour Sports Show, a support group. That is the flagship. And, the flagship is probably The New American Media. It's a page. But that's, more current events, politics, not a ton of sports unless it's super timely. Strictly Browns is the other Facebook group. Join Strictly Browns. And if you want one of our collector's pins, only 100 are made. I think I'm sending number 13 out the door. Hopefully they can become valuable someday, collectible someday. But it is a fundraiser to pay our graphic designer and then to fund us in our efforts here, once the graphic designer is taken care of course. Minimum $25 donation. If you're interested, leave a comment, and we will find a way to get in touch with you and make that happen. So signing out, I appreciate you. I love you, and we'll talk again soon. Take care. Bye.
The Unhappy Hour on TheNewAmericanMedia.com.